Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Easter.
Thank you.
Happy Christ consciousness rising, right? All right. So today we're talking about utilizing your invisible power. And this month we've been sharing the love that we feel inside the walls here at our center. And we've been sharing the light of our individual hearts illuminating this spiritual community and beyond. And we've been sharing the infinite possibilities that exist for us when we align and live from our spiritual truth. And each week we've been exploring and experiencing the depths of our connection to Source and how we can create the heights of joy and the freedom to soar and all of these things that we can do when we live in possibility thinking. So according to Genevieve Behrend in her book, Your Invisible Power, we all have access to an invisible power which immediately taps us into the realm of possibilities, which is always the realm of spirit. We've already been introduced to this power that taps us into the realm of possibilities, and today we lay claim to its full potential. To set the stage for it, I want to tell you a story, and this is actually a true story, one that I've told before, but it really fits really well with what we're talking about today. And then I want to offer some thoughts from a variety of sources. So in the mid-1400s, some of you might remember that time, in Italy, sculptors were commissioned to create a series of 12 large biblical figures for a cathedral in Florence. Some of us may have been at that cathedral in Florence. It took over 60 years to get the first two of the statues completed, and in 1464, the artist Agostino di Duccio was commissioned to sculpt the third. A giant block of marble was mined and brought all the way from a quarry in the northern Tuscany for the piece, although a great amount of effort and extreme expense was also used to bring this to them, and Di Duccio spent 2 years on the project, but he didn't get very far. He had only begun shaping the legs, feet, and the figure when, I quote, his association with the project ceased, in words of Wikipedia. I'd say that he was fired. A year later, in 1467, another artist, Antonio Rossellino, was commissioned to take up where Di Duccio left off. However, Rossellino did not get very far either before he too was fired. And the project was abandoned. And it wasn't abandoned for just a few months or even a few years. Rather, it was abandoned for 25 years. For 25 years, this huge block of marble lay neglected and deteriorating in the yard of the cathedral workshop. Then in 1501, the authorities were determined to find an artist who could take this large piece of marble, which they called the Giant, and turn it into a finished work of art. They ordered it to be raised on its feet so that a master experienced in this kind of work might examine it and express an opinion. Many were consulted on this project, including Leonardo da Vinci, but it was a young artist, only 26 years old, who convinced the church authorities to give him the commission. On August 16, 1501, Michelangelo was given the official contract, and he soon began carving the statue. He worked on the massive biblical hero for 3 years, and in 1504, David was complete. Although Michelangelo was an artistic genius with many capabilities, he considered sculpting to be the highest form of art because, among other reasons, he believed it mimicked divine creation. Meaning he worked under the premise that David was already in the block of stone, just waiting to be seen and revealed. His job was simply to chisel away that which was not David. And about the block of stone, Michelangelo said, I saw the angel in the marble and carved it until I set him free. Michelangelo used his invisible power to create a work of beauty and art that has withstood the test of time. So now to a couple of statements along the same lines of that. Muhammad Ali says, the man who has no imagination has no wings. Henry Miller says, imagination is the voice of daring. If there is anything godlike about God, it is that he dared to imagine everything. George Lucas, one of my favorites, you can't do it unless you can imagine it. Wow.
He was raised terribly messed up.
Yeah. I think you can imagine where we're going today. Yes? Let's just do a couple more, just in case. There's Albert Einstein who said, I am enough of an artist to draw freely upon my imagination. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. Einstein also said, logic will get you from A to Z, but imagination will get you everywhere. And the last one from Ernest Holmes, in Practical Application of Science of Mind. There is an irresistible, universal, and divine urge within us to be happy, to be whole, and to express the fullness of life. The latent divinity within us stirs our imagination, and because of its insistent demand, impels and compels our growth. It is back of every invention. It proclaims itself through the creative endeavor. It has produced sages, saints, and saviors, and will, when permitted, create a new world in which war, poverty, sickness, and famine will have disappeared. Aren't those all powerful statements? Our ability to imagine, to get a mental image of, to see in our mind's eye, or to get a mental equivalent of, is our invisible power to create the expanded possibilities for ourselves individually and for the world. Imagination is one of our 6 mental faculties that we discussed a few weeks ago. Imagination is ours because we are an expression of the great I Am, which is the essence of imagination. And if you ever doubt that God is the essence of imagination, take a look at a sample from the 925,000 different species of insects that exist. I just kind of picked up a few of these as I was going through there. Okay. And by the way, scientists think they have only cataloged about 20% of all of the species of insects. Well, aren't these amazing?
Wow,
I know. Pretty cool, huh?
that one's cool, man.
Yeah. I like the little pig up in
They're
there.
coming back. Baby bugs are coming back.
Yeah, this is what we've got here. Okay, so go back. Yeah. It's just amazing. Every one of those species first lived in the unformed ethers in the mind of God. Now that is imagination. You and I each have this power within us. It is a power that is virtually unlimited, and it has been given to us as our birthright to call forth from us and into our lives. This isn't just theology, this is science. Science has proven this power. At Harvard Medical School, neuroscientist Alvaro, I love these names, Pascal Leon, taught a group of students a little 5-finger piano exercise. Then the group was divided into 2. One group had to come every day for 5 days to practice the music for 2 hours. At the end of each day's practice, the scientists mapped how much the motor cortex of the brain controlled the finger movements needed to do the piano exercise. After 5 days of practice, the motor cortex devoted to these finger movements had grown significantly. The second group also came every day for 5 days, but instead of practicing the music on the piano, they were told to just imagine their fingers were playing for 2 hours. Then they too were tested. And to the great surprise of the researchers, they discovered that the region of motor cortex that controls the piano-playing fingers also expanded in their brains, just as it had in those who actually played it. They did the same thing with basketball players shooting free throws. They divided 2 teams. They had one of them practicing every day, and they had the other one just visualizing, practicing every day. And the results were almost identical. That's pretty amazing. Our mind is so powerful. Quoting the Time magazine article in which this research appeared, it says, in other words, they discovered that imagination can actually alter the physical structure and function of our brains. Imagining creates new neural pathways in your brain, which will make permanent changes in your life. And that was in Time magazine. And it was titled The Brain, How the Brain Rewires Itself. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? So let's do our own little scientific experiment here in this room. You guys ready for this? Are you up for it? Okay. All right, this one's called Books and Balloons Experiment. So what I'd like you to do is put your palms out, face up, in front of you, and then I want you to close your eyes. Okay, for the entire experiment. No cheating. You have to keep your eyes closed. All right? Now, imagine that someone places a book, a really big book, in your right hand. All right? And then that person places another book, and then another book, okay, in your right hand. Now they're placing one more really heavy book in your right hand. All right, now in your left hand, someone ties a helium balloon to your wrist. And then they tie another helium balloon and another helium balloon. Now you've got heavy books on your right and a helium balloons in your left. Open your eyes and notice where your hands are.
Oh, yeah.
It worked for some. It worked for some.
Imagine it.
Yeah.
Just sit there and hold your hands.
Well, that was the whole idea, was to just to imagine. It worked. I was watching. It worked for some of you. For some of you, it worked. Okay. Well, it is really an example of how powerful that invisible power truly is. So everything, I want you to just take a look around in this room. Everything that you see, everything that you experience with your senses was once in somebody's imagination. Everything.
Your imagination.
Yeah, everything. Yes, was once in your, everything was in someone's imagination. Sparkle in her daddy's eye, yes. This is the great truth you must come to realize for yourself. In order for something to get into this world where things exist, they must first be placed firmly into someone's imagination. They must be seen with the mind's eye. Biren shares the story of the Wright brothers in her book, Your Invisible Power, and says that one brother would tell the other when their varied experiments did not turn out as they were expected. "It's all right, brother, I can see myself riding in that machine, and it travels easily and steadily." Wow, that's the power of having a prayer partner or a partnership, more than one. Keep each other on track and know the truth for each other. So first, we must see it. What can we imagine? Sometimes we only use our imagination to create an image of what we don't want in our lives. Wow. Often I go right there to what I don't want in my life and catch myself and turn that around. Wayne Dyer says in his book, Wishes Fulfilled, highly functioning, self-actualized people, that's everybody here, right, never imagine what it is that they don't wish to have as their reality. So don't waste your imagination on what you don't want. Always focus on what you do want. Another way we can misuse this amazing power we have is to let our imagination be restricted to the current conditions of our lives. Well, that's the way it's always been. That's the way it's always going to be. How many times have we heard that? No, it does not have to be that way. Neville in The Power of Awareness said, disregard appearances, conditions, in fact, all evidence of your senses that deny the fulfillment of your desire. Rest in the assumption that you are already what you want to be, for in that determined assumption, you and your infinite being are merged in creative unity, and with your infinite being, God, all things are possible. God never fails. In The Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes wrote, it follows then that the range of our possibilities at the present time does not extend far beyond the range of our present concepts. As we bring ourselves to a greater vision, we induce a greater concept and thereby demonstrate more in our experience. We do not expect to give a treatment today for prosperity and have $1 million tomorrow. Not that that couldn't happen, but we don't expect that. But little by little, we can unfold our consciousness through the acquisition of greater and still greater mental equivalents until at last we shall be made free. The way to proceed is right where we are. Where else can we be? Where else can we start from? Let's not diminish this gift by using it in a way that contradicts its purpose, but rather proceed from right where we are with a vision and our imagination of that which is our next expression. Now, I'm not a golfer, but I was told a story by a minister friend of mine who follows golf, and she was reading about the golfer Suzanne Peterson. Has anybody heard about Suzanne? Okay. Well, I'm just going to share a little bit about it with you because it was interesting. The title of the article was Hot Pursuit of Top Spot LPGA Tour's Big Story. And it goes like this. Like a lot of teenage girls, Suzanne Peterson kept a diary as she was growing up. Hers was a bit more detailed and ambitious than the typical 13-year-old, though. An aspiring golfer who dreamed of playing on the LPGA Tour, Peterson set pictures of her idols, Annika Sorenstam, Tiger Woods, and Greg Norman, on the cover. She cut out individual letters. Has anybody ever done like a treasure map or affirmation board? Yeah, those are great. She cut out individual letters from magazines and formed sentences that laid out her dreams and desires. She took pictures of trophies from each of the majors and lined them up alongside each other. It looks really homemade, Peterson said Tuesday as she prepared for this week's JTBC Founders Cup and Wildfire Gold Club. I actually had to show it to some of the girls, fellow Norwegian pros, at a training camp in Orlando in January. And every time it feels like you're pulling up old love letters, but it's like after I'm showing it to people, I kind of laugh at myself. And yet Peterson nearly has fulfilled the bucket list she dreamed up as a kid. She's played for Europe's Solheim Cup team. She won a major. The only auspicious goal left is to be a top-ranked player in the world. So that's a pretty powerful imagination starting at such a young age. And so, I ask you this morning, how are you using this incredible, invisible power that is at your fingertips? How are you using?
Actually, I didn't know you could visualize things in your mind until I started painting. This is your movie screen. Right here.
And you
when
know
you're
that
meditating or want to remember a picture of something you want to paint, you close your eyes and your screen comes on and you have to practice visualizing things. Like when we were doing this,
yes.
you have to visualize the balloons and the books
Right.
on
The
your movie
pictures.
screen for it to work.
And that leads me to an interesting story that Rich and I were listening to the Blomberg report yesterday. We have a friend who is Persian, and she's been here to the church with her daughter, Leela, and her son is a famous painter in New York. And this was a story, you can look it up. His name is Ali Bandasar, and he was raised for the first 7 years of his life in Iran. And what would happen was that was back at the time where there were bombings and the Ayatollah and all of that was happening. And when they'd hear the sirens and the bombs going off, they'd go into their basement. And it caused him to have a medical condition, and I can't remember the name of it, but it combined sight and sound together. So as a young boy in this basement, he's drawing with pencils, and he's drawing what he's hearing. And so what he's hearing translates into his imagination, and he's drawing these charcoal and pencil drawings. And he went through, he's now in New York. His one of his pieces was just purchased by the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and he has showings all over the world, and they are huge. They're larger than this screen here, his paintings, but they all have, he connects the sound with the sight. And, you know, I mean, you're talking about the imagination that came with that, but more than that, here was a traumatic situation for this child at 7. They left and went to Turkey and then immigrated over here. Such a tragic life beginning for him. What an incredible, beautiful thing that has come out of that. So, you know, using your gifts and using your inspiration, it's amazing. So,
What's his name again?
Ali Bandasar.
Bandasar.
It's on the Bloomberg report.
Bloomberg, yes.
March 23rd.
So are you using this invisible power? How are you using this invisible power to create a life of joy and happiness for yourself? A world of harmony and health and peace and plenty for all. I mean, why stop? We have total access to imagination and we can use it. So are you willing to do that? Are you willing to use this imagination, this invisible power that is within us? Are you willing to commit to that right now? Will you commit to no longer using your amazing power of imagination to terrorize yourself? There's a good choice. If you are ready to do that, I'd like to hear an amen.
Amen.
All right. You know, can we have it a little bit like you mean it? All right. If you are willing to commit to using your imagination to create a world that works for you and for everyone, say amen.
Amen.
All right. And so, if you're willing to commit to using this and to creating greater possibilities and seeing and imagining greater possibilities in your life and all of humanity, let's just say amen one more time.
Amen.
Amen. And knowing that amen means, and so it is.
Yeah.
And so it is.
That's what it is.